Hello, everybody. Today is April 12th, 2024, and I am going to call this Take Two on the Sampler Block So Long Basic Block 14 tutorial, which is a block that we are doing with Rita's Roost, Mona Dip What, and Rowena. I did actually post a video earlier today with the completed tutorial, and someone was kind enough to point out that I actually mirrored my block. All that means is I did the block a little differently than the block that we chose, which was the sampler or the place choice from Delaware Quilts. So, in a moment of honesty, I am just going to say that sometimes as quilters, we are left a little uninspired by a block that we are making for either a sampler, or we're looking through a catalog, or we're looking through patterns, and something is chosen when you're doing it in a group. And actually, I chose this block. And at the time, it looked cute, but maybe I was seeing something different. So I am going to remake the block as it is intended to be. Again, I did make the block on my EQ8 program so I could give you cutting instructions. However, this block is not going to be in my final quilt. This is going to go in an orphan block stack that I have to make an orphan block quilt at some point in the future. But I did want to do this correctly. I am going to post my original video once this post, and it is going to be that video is going to be my oops video. I'm going to call that Lisa's choice, because my name is Lisa, and that is what I was visualizing for that block, and I think it just came out in that tutorial. But enough about that. We're just going to go ahead and get this started. Now, the cutting directions are going to be the same. You are still going to have 3 blocks. You're going to have your main fabric, a secondary fabric, and your background. You will need 8 3.5 squares of your background, 8 3.5 squares of your secondary fabric of your choice, and a 4 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangle for your primary fabric. So 8 3.5 squares, 8 3.5 squares on your secondary fabric, and 4 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles for your primary fabric. Very easy. We are going to set all of this aside. We are going to take 4 of our backgrounds and 4 of our secondary fabric. And you might not be able to see it because it is a light blue. And you are simply going to sew right sides facing together. You're going to take a 1/4 inch seam. You're going to sew 4 sets of these. So let's get them sewn. Okay, so I have made my 4 units. They all look like this. We are going to set that aside, and we are going to grab the remaining 4 3.5 squares from each of our secondary fabric and our background fabric. And then we are going to make a diagonal line on the back side of the remaining squares. Like that. It's a little press. So, and like that. And so we have our diagonal lines on the back side of the house, the back side of our fabric. You're going to take your 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangle. We're going to start with our background fabric, and all we're going to do, and this is where I actually made a mistake in the first video that I pulled or made. You are going to place that diagonal line that you made with the tip of that diagonal line on your top right hand corner going down towards the middle of your fabric. You can slip a pin in it or whatever you need to do to keep that fabric aligned. And you are going to sew directly on that drawn line. We're going to go ahead and do that to all 4 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, I have sewn across the seam line, right down on the seam line that we created, on that drawn line that we created. When I flip my block, I just want to make sure that everything matches and there is adequate coverage. And then I am going to trim 1/4 inch away from that seam line. Opening it up, it looks like that. I'm going to press it out very quickly. So now I have a block that looks like that, like this. Now I'm going to take the secondary fabric, placing it right sides together, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the top of the line that we've drawn, facing the top right hand corner going down towards the middle, and your background fabric will be facing to the top left. You're going to do that for the 4 rectangles. We're going to go ahead and sew that now. Okay, so I have completed sewing on the seam, the diagonal seam on this block. When I lay it over, there is appropriate coverage and it looks like this. I am going to cut 1/4 inch away from that seam line. And give it a press. At this point, you want to make sure that your rectangles are still at 3.5 by 6.5 because it will make putting the block sets together or the unit sets together. At this point, we are going to assemble our blocks. And let's see if I can do this. It will be, your block assembly will be your secondary fabric touching your primary fabric with your background fabric facing the top right and your background fabric 3.5 inch square on your bottom left hand corner. It's going to look like this. You are going to put this block together just like that, taking a quarter and a half or a quarter inch seam on that block. And you are going to make 4 sets exactly like this. Let's go ahead and get that done. All right, we have our 4 units sewn. They all look like this. And now we are just going to assemble the blocks together with our solid square on the outside. Facing the outside. Now, if your units are looking a little wonky, they should finish at 6.5, or they should be a 6.5 by 6.5 square. Excuse me. They should be a 6.5 square, and that will help get the block together. And now we're just simply going to go ahead and take a quarter inch seam down the sides. And we'll go ahead and do that now. So we are almost there. We have our top and bottom rows. I'm just going to finger press it right there in the middle. We are going to fold it up, sew it together, nest that middle seam really well. And you can go ahead and put a pin in it. You may find that depending on how you sewed it down, that it's a little bulky. Just go slow, take your time, and you will get over it, over that little hump. So let's go ahead and take that final seam right now. Okay, so we have sewn the last seam. I went ahead and pressed it out. I did not trim my block to 12.5. As I've said before, I normally trim them when I am getting ready to assemble the blocks. And that is just so if there's any fraying that goes on, I can take care of that during the trimming down process. But this is Clay's choice. The other block was Lisa's choice. And, really, when I look at it, I think it is a pretty block. I may not have been inspired by the pattern itself and the coloration, but it actually turned out to be a very pretty block. Well, this was the one that I made earlier. I still have not quilted it out. And the colors are not as vibrant on the camera as they are in person, but these are very bright pinks and a teal green. But this is Clay's choice. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will repost or make that other quilt pattern, the block pattern, public once this is uploaded, and you can make a selection on how you want to complete it. Again, this is Clay's choice, and I hope you enjoyed this video, second one of the day. And I thank you. Be blessed, be kind, keep sewing.